You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we go beyond our traditional stomping grounds of your Apple, your SPY, your Tesla, your VIX options, and look a little bit farther afield. See what's lighting up the tape over there in the world of crypto. Going to talk your Bitcoin options, your ETH, talk the futures, the spot, the volume, the volatility, the SKEW, the OI, all that fun stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. I know there was a bit of flux there on the time today. You can blame the crazy weather that is rolling through the Chicagoland area pretty much as we speak. So hopefully we'll get the full show out, not get knocked off the air. But some pretty bad storms, in fact, forced them to cancel the upcoming big Game 4 of the playoff series here with the White Sox in town, which I was planning to head out to right after our last show. So a lot of things in flux. We were going to have our buddy, Mr. Simon Ho, dialing in, I should say, from T3 Index, of course, the Spike's father himself, also the creator of BitVol and ETHVol, and some cool new stuff, some cool new crypto SKEW indices. Unfortunately, we had to move things around, and it's, 3 a.m. over there, 5 a.m. in Perth, or excuse me, he's in Sydney, actually. So kind of hard to make him change things up. So we'll get him back on soon to get an update. A lot of cool stuff popping off from him there in the realm of crypto. So instead, we're going to do a Just the Facts, Ma'am edition and dive right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the activity in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, we're talking about the big dog, Bitcoin, and man, a lot bigger on today's show than it was at this time last week, coming on the tail end of our last show. We were still shy of the 50K level, 49,276. And coming into today's show, a wee bit north of that, 57,494 to be precise. So up a whopping, 8,200 handles and change out there. Also had quite the range. Got as low. Pretty much our last show was pretty close to the low, actually. We were just about 100 points above it. Low about 49,150 or so, and then bounced off that. Got as high as pretty close to where we are right now as well. We've danced at both extremes over the course of the last week. Got up to about 57,760 out there today. So yeah, threatening the 60K level again, a level a lot of people didn't think they might see for quite some time out there, now threatening it yet again. So interesting trends afoot out there in the big dog Bitcoin. Interestingly enough, we've had quite the range over the course of the past week, but as I said before, Bitcoin vol is behaving a lot like precious metals vol lately, where it could have some nice sharp spikes in the short term, and then once over the longer term, it kind of drifts right back down to this level it likes to hang out at, it's comfortable at, and it'll stay there for a while. And it's pretty much doing that again this week. Coming into showtime, on our last show, the Bitcoin vol was 81.5. By the way, all these analytics and metrics coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. GVol.io is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. You can check out all this stuff for yourself. The average at the money vol, which is what we're breaking down right now. SKEW, OI changes, hot strikes, all that stuff, and a whole bunch more. GVol.io is the place to go. If you like keeping track of this space, analyzing the trades out there, it's literally one of the only games in town to do just that. So check it out, GVol.io, as we keep on rolling here. Again, last show we were at about an 81.5 from an average at the money volatility out there in Bitcoin land. Coming into today's show at a whopping 81. So it has moved a 0.5% since our last show. So again, not a lot of evolution on the vol front. Since I mentioned our buddy Simon Ho was going to join us in the hot seat today, we had to change things around on him. Let's take a quick gander at his products out there as well. If you head on over there to T3index.com, T, the number 3, and then just index.com. You can see a bunch of different things out there. Click on the indices tab. You'll see spikes, of course, which we talk about every week on the Volatility Views program, but also go down to crypto, and you'll see a BitVol out there hanging out. Coming into showtime was at about almost a 92, about a 91.70 or so. Puts it up about 2 points from where it was this time last show. So again, not a lot of evolution out there as well. And over the course of the past year, looks like it topped out in January of this year at a 171 for BitVol, and the low it has flirted many times. Looks like the 70s was the low, about 76 and change was the low back in April of this year. So even though we have come close to it recently, got down to 84 and 83 not too long ago out there in BitVol, but haven't tested the lows yet again. Let's go out to the SKEW. Again, kind of your average 30-20 SKEW out there, taking all the options in the 30 delta to 20 delta range. If those terms are unfamiliar to you, check out all of our educational content here on the network, in particular Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. Two great ones to get started with. On our last show, the SKEW is about a -1.5. It has swung, not dramatically, it has swung to positive 1.5. So a bit of an evolution out there, but not a huge change. Speaking of SKEW, our buddy Simon was going to join us today because he's going to talk about the launch of his new SKEW indices, which you can check these out for yourselves as well over there at T3 Index. Just go to the index section, go down from crypto, and right below BitVol, you'll see SKEW. And if you follow that, that'll kind of give you, click on that, it'll give you some inclination of what's been going on from a SKEW perspective out there. And coming into today's show, it's at about 91. What does that mean? Well, we're kind of at the upper portion of that range. You haven't seen a huge evolution in the SKEW over the course of the past year. The low is a little bit shy of 77, about a 76.90. That was back in the dark days, the doldrums of August. Not a lot of paper was going up out there. And the high is not that far away from where it is right now, at about a 95. And it has flirted with that level multiple times over the course of the past year, including in June and into July. It has kind of bounced off that 95 level a few times. Which, you've listened to this show, you'll know what's going on from an evolution of SKEW perspective. You know, we've seen a few dramatic intraday spikes, particularly on big sell-offs out there. But other than that, we haven't seen a dramatic amount of evolution. But I do want to get Simon back on so he could explain exactly the mechanics, what he's measuring out here, how he is coming up with this number of a 92 or 91 and change. So we'll look forward to having him back on the show again soon so we can get into this in a lot more detail. But if you want some additional indices to keep an eye on out there in the world of Bitcoin and ETH, and you're intrigued by things like VIX and all the mechanics that go into those types of things, and BitVol, and now the new SKEW, you can do a lot worse than checking those out. Let's go back on out to the overall analytics out there now. Let's look at the open interest, see what's going on from a call and put perspective out there in Bitcoin. And we've seen a little bit of a change since last week, not a ton. The calls have been roughly 2-to-1 over the puts for months now out there in Bitcoin land. And that's pretty much still the case this week. And they are outpacing the puts pretty much 2-to-1 from a growth perspective as well. The calls are up to about 116,000 contracts open right now in Bitcoin. It's up about 15,000 from this time last week. And the puts are at about 56,000. It's up about 8,200 from this time last week. So pretty much 2-to-1 across the board out there. Calls over puts. Will that change? We have seen some sharp sell-offs of late out there. And so that didn't really gin up the put numbers the way you might think. So maybe we need another protracted downturn. I know the bulls don't want to hear that, but maybe we need another protracted downturn to really kick those puts into high gear. Remember, we talked, you guys, not everyone heard it. You had to be part of our pro Q&A, but we had Greg from Genesis Volatility on our pro Q&A session recently. He broke down some of the secret hidden dangers of selling puts in some of these crypto derivatives out there. I encourage you to check that out if you are intrigued by that. We did put out a clip of that to our Twitter audience out there, so you can hear some of that clip, which it's intriguing stuff. And again, things you don't really have to deal with when you're talking about selling a quote unquote cash secured put on a stock. But when you're doing it, particularly in a crypto in which what you're selling is crypto denominated, you have a little bit of a extra sort of Damocles hanging over your head. Check out that conversation if you haven't done so already. Moving on out to the OI across the months. What are the hot months? Where are people lining up their trades right now in Bitcoin options? And quarterlies have kind of been leading the dance a lot lately, and that continues to be the case in Bitcoin. 71,000 contracts open in December. That is the clear number one. It's up about 7,000 contracts from this time last week. October has about 37,000 contracts open. That is an active number two, but still a very distant number two. It's up about 7,000 contracts from this time last week. And bringing up the rear, a distant third is March. Again, going back out to the quarterlies with about 13,000 contracts in our top three out there. Looking at the overall value now of that open interest, how much actual notional value is open. Again, I take a dismal view of using notional versus actually counting the contracts. But again, this is kind of the way things are done in the crypto space. So I'm not going to buck the trend anymore. Let's just look on out here. Let's overall notional value of the options contracts. Again, we're looking at Deribit. This is the big dog out here. There's about $9 billion worth of quote unquote notional value open on Deribit right now. That's up a couple of billion from last week. Again, it was $7 billion. Again, we have seen a huge swing in the value of Bitcoin as well. So that's going to play with some of these numbers a bit as well. And the overall, looking at the other venues, you got close to $1 billion worth of notional open interest open on the other venues now as well. The number two behind Deribit, again, it's a very distant number two, is LedgerX with 318 million worth of notional OI, followed by CME, number three, 260 million, number four, Bit.com, 240 million. And then bringing up the rear, there is OKEX with 187 million. Add all those up together, you got close to 10 billion across all the venues. Let's look at the volume. And actually, for a while now, we've been saying not a lot of volume. Last week, we kind of bucked the trend. We had our first real 1 billion worth of notional volume day again back on the 1st of October. And this past week, we hit that number, indeed exceeded it a couple of times. So a pretty active week out there in the Bitcoin options scene. Again, we had a huge move in the underlying price. So you'd hope that would drive some overall options activity. We saw on the 6th, that was the most active day, 1.5 billion worth of notional volume going up that day, followed by the 8th with about 1.2 billion. Today, so far, closing in on $1 billion again, over 700 million having changed hands already today over there on Deribit. So we're threatening 3 days over the past week with $1 billion or more worth of notional volume going up. So a little bit of action back on the tape, which is good to see, because for a while there throughout most of the summer, we didn't see a ton of paper lighting it up. We had days of 100 odd million worth of notional volume going up. So we are a far cry from that again, which is good, even though we are also still not quite at those levels we saw back in April and May in the teeth of the sell-off, where we were seeing $2 billion on a regular basis out there, particularly in April. Let's look on out now to Bitcoin options over there on CME and the whole crypto complex over there on CME. By the way, I had a good chat with Tim McCourt on our TWIFO program, This Week in Futures Options, last week. He's the guy who heads up all of the crypto products over there, as well as the equity products. So if you're intrigued by what's going on over there, check out that episode from last week, This Week in Futures Options. If you're subscribed to the full network, you already have it. If not, go add it to your podcast collection over there, because we do get to crypto every now and then on that show as well. And coming into the show, one of the things I talked about with Tim is we have seen a little bit of an uptick over there in the overall Bitcoin options volume. And we're starting to see some of that again today. The OI ticking up to nearly 1,000 contracts. Again, doesn't sound like a lot, and it isn't a lot compared to a lot of other products out there. But again, it is a 5X contract, so a little bit of a beefier product than most of you are probably used to trading. And again, seeing that ticking up, it means it's moving in the right direction. Again, we want volume in all these products at the end of the day. It's just a good thing for you folks out there to have choices, to have options, pun intended. So the more of these products that are trading decent numbers, the better it is for all of you out there. The OI on the futures also pretty active out there, up about 2,400 contracts, about 10,400. That's seen a big jump on the futures as well. So again, we've seen a big swing in the underlying. You're seeing some growth in the OI, which is good to see. And the place where a lot of you are probably going to be hanging your hat if you're going to trade crypto at CME, the micro Bitcoin futures, also seeing a big jump out there. The OI back up to about 47,000 contracts, up about 15,000. So a lot of these products had lost some of their OI, some of their luster when September rolled off the board. Now they're starting to see some of that come back in. So that's good to see that the OI is being replaced out there. So intriguing stuff out there. Not kind of a light day coming into today's show. The most active contract, obviously from a contract perspective, going to be the micro Bitcoin futures, closing in on 20,000 contracts coming into showtime. So a decent day for them out there. We'll see if the others can catch up. Not a lot of action on the big Bitcoin future, only about 5,700. We have seen many more active days out there, and only 29 options on the tape so far today. So a light day out there as we keep on rolling into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the program where we break down everything outside of the world of Bitcoin, except for right now, when we break down the top 10 here. Let's start at number 10. A lot of you will be happy. Others of you will be outraged to hear that Doge still lurking there in the top 10 with about almost exactly 30 billion worth of market cap. Remember, take these overall market caps with a very large and hopefully tasty grain of salt. The rankings are, I think, where the value is. The overall value of that market cap, again, they gin up those numbers a wee bit out there. Number 9, good old USD Coin, holding firm at about 33, almost 33.5 billion out there with the market cap. Number 8, Polkadot. Greg was talking about this on his Pro Q&A recently on the network. An intriguing one out there. And a lot of you like to play in ETH, or at least intrigued by Polkadot, what it has to offer. It's coming in at number 8 this week at about 33, almost 34 billion. Number 7, Solana, kind of the thing that really has roared onto a lot of people's radar over the course of the past few months. Taking a little bit of a break right now, but still looking pretty lofty at about a 43 billion worth of market cap. And a good for number 7 out there. Number 6, our old friend XRP. Still buffeted by the winds of the SEC out there. Can you trade it? Can you not trade it? Been a lot of issues, really. A lot of headwinds against XRP, but it's still holding in number 6 right now at about 53, almost 53.5 billion worth of market cap. Number 5, it's Tether. 68 billion worth of market cap out there. Number 4, good old Binance Coin, closing in on 70 billion, 69.5 billion right now. Number 3, it's Cardano. You don't get a lot of the Cardano army writing it. We've heard a lot of some of the Solana folks. Of course, the ETH folks are always represented in our comments and our questions out there. But you're a Cardano fan? Hit us up. Let us know. I'm intrigued. It does a lot of paper. It does a lot of volume. It's clearly got a lot of action behind it. It's number 3 in the overall market cap right now at about 71.5 billion. Are you intrigued by this one? Are you into the whole smart contract kind of arena out there? Hit us up. Let us know. Number 2, you know what it is. It's ETH with about 418 billion worth of market cap. And number 1 looking pretty big again, back over the 1T level. A little while ago, it didn't seem like we were going to get that back to that level anytime soon, but we are back over the 1T, the 1 trillion level in terms of market cap for Bitcoin today, listeners. So that'll make the Bitcoin bulls happy. The rest of you, I don't know what to say, but we'll keep on rolling. Let's look at the number 2. In a lot of your hearts, even though a lot of you I know, it's clearly number 1. It's ETH. ETH does have some of the more diehard proponents out there. Let me just put it that way, which we love to hear from all of you folks out there. Hit us up with your favorites, your least favorites, your thoughts on Doge. You guys aren't reticent about that either. Or now these days, Shiba Inu Coin, another one you folks have been hitting us up about of late out there. But let's go on out to the number 2, ETH. A nice little run, not quite the Bitcoin run, up about 100, almost 140 handles from where it was this time last week. Coming into showtime was at a 35.55 pretty much in ETH. We saw a high of 36.66, and coming into today, we saw the low of about 33.45 or so. So nice little about 300 point range out there, but again, nowhere near what we're seeing out there in the aggressive moves in Bitcoin of late. And that's again reflected something similar in the ETH vol that we're seeing in Bitcoin vol, which is it's kind of hanging out. It was at a 92% on our last show, 91% right now, still structurally a little higher than Bitcoin, which is usually where it resides out there, but not really doing a heck of a lot from last show till now pretty much. SKEW, same deal. Last week it was about a negative 0.5. This week, a positive 0.5. So it has swung a full point, and that's really about it out there. It's not a lot of evolution on that front. Calls are dramatically outpacing puts right now in ETH, and that remains the case, even though from a growth of OI perspective, they are kind of neck and neck out here this week. The calls are up to about 836,000 contracts open right now in ETH. That's up 25,000 from this time last week. The puts are a paltry 368,000. That's actually down 18,000 from this time last week. So yeah, not only are from an OI perspective, are we not seeing a lot of growth, but you're actually closing some out there in the puts this week. So again, what's it going to take to spark these puts to life in Bitcoin and in ETH? Clearly not what we're seeing out there this week. In terms of the notional value of the OI out there on Deribit, again, Deribit is kind of all the oxygen in the room when it comes to ETH. There really isn't even a number 2 worth talking about in the ETH arena from an ETH options perspective. And the value of that OI has remained pretty much the same, still about 4 billion. It's 4 billion last week, about 4 billion this week. And the next closest you have is OKEX with around 94 million, but it's a very, very distant number 2. In terms of action out there, how much paper do we see going up this week? Was it as active as we saw the Bitcoin options that were putting up 1+ billion multiple days this past week? And the answer to that is not so much. Not a hot and heavy week out there in the ETH options. The notional value of how much was going up over there on Deribit this week, it had a few busy days, but it wasn't even as active as it was last week. Last show, the busiest day was Friday the 1st. That had 461 million worth of volume changing hands that day. This show, the most active day was the 6th with about 325 million. So we're not even at the level we saw from this time last week. So not quite as robust of a week from a volume perspective as it was out there on the Bitcoin options front. In terms of perspectives, in terms of how you folks are lining up from an expiration perspective out there, it's been mostly quarterlies all the time in ETH, and that remains mostly the case. ACK is peeking his head out there, but it still is a distant number 2 to the big dog out there, which is December. Just a tick under 500,000 contracts. Just a tick under 500,000. 499,000 contracts open in December options in ETH right now. It's up about 9,000 from this time last week. Number 2 is October, a distant number 2. Only 205,000 contracts. That's up about 16,000, but there's no way it's going to have time to catch up to December. It's just not enough time. And then number 3 is March. Slowly gaining on October, up about 12,000. And we'll see maybe towards the end of the year if March can start sneaking in there more. But looks like Geese is going to be the king of the roost for a while out there in ETH options. Speaking of the king of the roost, what is the size position out there? Where are you folks lining up from a strike perspective out there in ETH options right now? And it's been the 5,000 strike for a while. It remains the 5,000 strike this week as well. There are 76,000 contracts open on the 5K strike right now. It's up about 2,000 from this time last week, and enough to clearly maintain its death grip on the number 1 spot right now. You folks are just fixated on the 5K strike right there in ETH right now. Number 2 is the 10,000 strike. So we talk about, the par strike in ETH options and how active that is. But in terms of ETH, the 10K strike is pretty active as well. 60,000 contracts open on that strike right now. It's up about 6,000 from this time last week. Number 3 is the 4,000 strike, so a little bit more relevant to where we are right now. That's at about 56,000 contracts open. It's up about 5,000. And then number 4, we kind of have a tie for number 4/5 in our top 5 this week. It's the 6K strike and the 8K strike. Both of them at about exactly 47,000 contracts open. 6,000 strike is actually a newcomer to our top 5, whereas the 8,000 strike is up nearly 3,000 contracts from this time last week. So an interesting assortment of strikes. Still the 5K strike, the big dog, followed by 10,000, 4,000, then the 6,000 strike, and then the 8,000 strike, kind of a 6K and 8K. Both of those kind of tied for 47,000 apiece. In terms of the ETH futures over there at CME, they have been trending up a little bit. The OI is up to about 4,600 contracts, and now puts it up about 200. So not the same size growth we're seeing as in the Bitcoin futures and options over there. And also the ETH futures still suffer from the same problem that the Bitcoin futures do. They're still just kind of too big. And so we're waiting for some new micro size products to come out on those. I always press Tim whenever he joins us on the show. When are we going to see the new smaller stuff? When are we going to see the new smaller stuff? So hopefully we'll see something on the ETH front soon. So make something a little bit more relevant for you folks to keep an eye on out there. On the CME ETH front, let's look at some other altcoin really quickly. Then we'll wrap up this Just Your Facts, ma'am edition with some of your questions. Let's go on out to Ripple, having a nice little run, up about 9 cents from our last show, but still kind of hanging out at that level. It's been around a little bit north of $1 for a little while now. Dogecoin pretty much unched from where it was this time last week, still clinging to number 10 out there. And Litecoin having a bit of a resurgence back up to 179 this week after hanging out in the 160 range, up nearly 11 points from where it was this time last week. Remember, Litecoin was very infamously involved in that whole, shall we say, pump and dump out there a couple of weeks ago. And I think it was with Walmart. They were talking about Walmart taking Litecoin out there. That was proven very quickly to be false, but it got a lot of people thinking, talking, and asking about Litecoin out there again. So intriguing to see Litecoin back on, on our top 10, and again back on your radar after, it seems like after the halving in Litecoin, interest for a lot of you really kind of fell off, and we saw that reflected in some of the prices out there. But we'll see if that's changing. And then coming in this week, we're seeing some of your favorites. We got Solana coming in about a 144. That's taking a little bit of a break out there today. Looks like a lot of them are actually taking a break. Cardano off about 3%, right around 217. And Polkadot down about 4%, about 34 out there. Again, you guys have asked about derivatives on these. Not a lot of action on that front yet, but hopefully sometime soon we'll be able to talk about slinging options on all of these altcoins that you folks are hitting us up on this week. So Cardano kind of unched on the week, up down a few cents. Polkadot actually up about $3 from where it was this time last week. And Solana, again, taking a break, down about 26, almost 27 points. Again, it's hard not to fault that one. They has seen a tremendous run up over the course of the past few months. So taking a little bit of a break out there in Solana. But we're not taking a break from your questions. Let's get into a few of those next.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. Your crypto questions. This first one comes from, I like this, Mr. Tim. Mr. Tim, I like that hand. Mr. Tim wants to know, what do you think will be the next hot crypto derivative? We could ask this a lot, and this, again, it depends kind of how you're carving up the space, what you're interested in. You're looking at something maybe being added to a Deribit where a lot of the volume is going up right now, or maybe for a lot of our audience that are here in the U.S., can't really play on Deribit, so you're more intrigued on what's coming maybe from a CME or from a Ledger X. And, I just asked this to Tim on the TWIFO show last week when they start bringing out some new, smaller, bite-sized contracts, including what I think will be the more relevant product for a lot of the listeners of this show, and that is the options on the micro Bitcoin future. So if I had to put my money on a product that will probably resonate a lot with the retail folks, and certainly for the US audience, you can actually trade these things as opposed to having to, VPN into a Deribit and violate their terms of service and everything else. Then the micro Bitcoin futures are, I think, options on those are going to be attractive to a lot of people. Unfortunately, they're not listed yet. I tried to get a little bit more concrete date from when we could see those out of Tim on the TWIFO show last week. We don't have a clear date, but I would have to expect that they're doing decent numbers. The OI is growing. At some point, they will launch the options on those. And for a lot of you out there who've been kind of wringing your hand saying, I like this stuff. And look at Bitcoin. It's moved, almost 10,000 points over the course of the past week. How nice would it be to have a nice liquid, lit options market here for our U.S. audience to really dive into without having to jump through hoops? I know they have some interesting stuff over there at LedgerX. They've been on the show multiple times, and they are growing their liquidity out there, but they will admit they still have a long way to go. They still have some issues they need to wring out. They don't have auto exercise on their contracts yet, and the lion's share of the use case is still just covered call overwriting. If you want to do anything beyond that, I think we had a listener ask about time spreads and things recently. It's still not there yet from a liquidity perspective out there, but they are growing. I would love to see LedgerX take off as well and really be a viable choice for a lot of you out there. And it's getting there. If you want the physically settled, physically delivered contract, certainly they provide that for you. But I think for a lot of you, I think the one that's going to probably get you intrigued and maybe provide a good, safe, sensibly sized entry point into the crypto options market is probably going to be options on these micro Bitcoins. I'm going to probably lean on those unless LedgerX comes out with something. You see a lot of cool things. SKEW indices coming out of, Simon. I know he works at the LedgerX folks. None of these are tradable yet. That'd be cool if they were. But I think for things that you folks can really sink your teeth into that will be meaningful for a lot of you, I do think it's going to be the options on the micro Bitcoin futures. Unfortunately, I don't have an update as to when they are coming, but hopefully sometime soon. All right, and that music means that's going to do it for this Just the Facts, Ma'am edition of the Crypto Rundown. Again, we'll bring back the hot seat next week. We'll get Simon back on the show to break down all of his cool new crypto indices in a whole bunch more detail. Meanwhile, you can check those out, of course, at t3index.com. And you know where to go to kick the tires and light the fires on all things crypto analytics. GVOL, GVOL.io is the place to go out there. On behalf of our friends over there in Genesis and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live. I know we had some flummox in the live schedule. Don't worry, it'll be all nailed down for next week. And we'll see you back here next week, another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.